For just under 10 years, I've helped thousands of small business owners grow. And what I've realized is the majority of them end up going through what's called the great filter process, which separates those who stagnate and ultimately fail between those who actually succeed in business. Now, the good news is if you've landed on this video and you're asking yourself, well, why isn't my business where it should be? Then by the end of it, if you stick all the way through, you'll understand exactly what the bottlenecks to growth are and how to fix them in your business. Or if you would rather just keep guessing about growth and wasting more time, more money, and more resources, you can click off now. But if you're serious about growth, let's dive right into it. The first thing we need to understand is how the great filter works when it comes to business, entrepreneurship, or just general success. At the very top, you have what is called Tier 0, and this is where the majority of the population lives. This is somebody who is either extracting value out of an existing asset, think of like a rental property, stocks, bonds, crypto, royalties, or more than likely, they have a job. So they're exchanging their time and their skill set for what the agreed upon market rate is, and that's basically all there is to it. Most people will always stay in there. Most people will always have a 9 to 5. You are not one of those people. If you are watching this video, you want to know how to succeed and make your dreams a reality. So eventually what happens is you move into what's called a Tier 1. And this is pretty much where almost all businesses or all freelancers end up starting because it is the easiest. What happens is you now realize, you know what, I would like to exchange my time for something that I believe would get me more money. So I'm going to shift my skill set, or I'm going to create a product that I'm going to enter into the market. The problem with this is also where the majority of quote unquote businesses exist. This is everybody from a freelancer with a camera to the local accountant on Main Street to probably a solopreneur who just joined an MLM. Most businesses, quote unquote businesses, live in this bubble where you are selling a product category or you're selling a job title. The problem with this is you are basically at the whim of the market, meaning that you are dictated by competition, by how much people how much people will be willing to pay for your thing in that area, and how much they see as its perceived value. So if you say I'm an accountant and there's a cheaper accountant, then you are basically interchangeable between the two. And a lot of businesses think that they are better than the competition, but if you are in Tier 1 and you can't tell me why you're better, then you will stay in Tier 1. Then what happens is businesses will start to move into Tier 2 because they say, wait a minute, I am actually better than a lot of competitors. My product is a lot more compelling than what other people are offering. I should probably think about real reasons that is. I should probably start to understand the value I'm creating. So in here, you typically form your first niche and usually your first offer. And what happens is now all of a sudden you're like, all right, I don't want to work with everybody. I'd like to focus on this portion of the market. And now I have kind of a compelling offer that's somewhat scripted, and I'm just creating a little bit more of a system in place. I'm starting to understand that I don't want to work with everybody because everybody means people who are going to be time wasters, tire kickers who want to compete on price, or people who just flat out are not good for your product or service. And then at some point you probably think to yourself, okay, now I have this niche, I get a better understanding of these people and their needs, their wants, their likes. I'm gonna build a really compelling offer so I can deploy that to as many people in this section or in this market sector as possible. This is the part where a lot of people suddenly escape the mindset of a small business owner and start thinking more like a successful one, because now you're focusing on somebody and you're providing a very clear offer that tends to resonate with them more. This allows you to build leverage because you're not doing and working with all these different people at the same time. Tier 3 is where things start to get really, really compelling, because now you're also focusing on a clear outcome. The outcome is now all of a sudden you're like, well, great, I do have this niche and I have this offer and people are buying it, and suddenly the roles are reversed. You're no longer selling just this job title, you're no longer positioning and branding yourself just in Tier 2, but now you're starting to understand, wait a minute, I'm actually selling the result of my product or the result of my service. So an example might be somebody who says like, all right, well, I am suddenly a personal trainer, and now I'm a personal trainer for busy tech CEOs, and I can help you lose weight, and I can do all this extra stuff, nutrition planning, all these other things, and now I'm actually helping you lose 10 pounds in 30 days. If you are a busy tech CEO, I have 5 slots available. So now you have an offer, you have a target, and more realistically, you're not even just focusing on the product or service that comes later. What you're really focusing on is the outcome. And then eventually, this is the part where most businesses start to really think in systems and automation. They start to gain leverage. They are not as involved in the business because they can outsource it. They can trade other people's time for higher leverage opportunities. And this is the part where fundamentally between tier 2 and tier 3, you realize it's easier to get somebody to push the right buttons, or it's easier for me to deploy this in a way that is more efficient, so that way I can get it to as many of those people as possible with the least amount of resources utilized. Basically, at this point, let's say you're a tier 2 and you have a niche offer, that ability for you to sell to everybody when you're here means that it is only you who can do that. When you focus on a niche and you have the offer, it's a lot easier to get people who understand the market to sell your thing. And the outcome is even better because now you probably have proof of doing the thing, you're able to consistently generate that result, and ultimately you just need the right person to say the right words or the right timing. For instance, this is your assembly line, and you really at that point, you're just deploying that blueprint and you're saying, hey, 500 other people got this result. All I have to do is to make 500 other people more aware of that result, who need that result, and I can hire out more people to do that. The last one is really hard to get to, but at this point, you win the game. So very rarely do people make it to tier 4, but tier 4 is you're basically a pseudo monopoly, or the market is copying you. At this point, you are so big and you're so powerful and you're so valuable that you really are dictating everything, and people are starting to copy you. Most people won't make it to this stage, and that's absolutely fine. Really, what you want to do is just move as efficiently down the line as possible, because most businesses, I would say 80% of them just get stuck at tier 1. If you're watching this video and saying like, I'm a car detailer, I'm a landscaper, I provide this tomato sauce. If you just literally flat out say, that is my product category, that is my job title, then you'll be stuck here forever and you won't be able to gain leverage because you'll be working with too many people. It's not really clear the value you provide, nothing really makes sense, so that you don't really have a business. You basically are a solopreneur or a freelancer, and sometimes maybe you have a few employees, but it never really grows beyond being operator or owner-operator led. Then in tier 2, now you understand like, wait a minute, these people are really great to work with and they all have these same concerns. Why don't I just package my thing and only go after these people who are going to get great killer results out of working with me? And then tier 3 is like, wait a minute, now I have 500 people who have bought this thing and they all got a very consistent result. I can now sell that outcome to a particular market segment. And then finally, tier 4 is just, you're basically a pseudo monopoly. So now that you understand where you're at on the map, hopefully you are hovering most likely between tier 1 and tier 2, where you're kind of like, yeah, you know, I do offer this and I would really like to focus on somebody. If you can get past the mindset of trying to work with everybody, that's great, because you can escape small business owner land and go into successful business owner land simply by focusing on a target. Now, to recap, before we jump into this, just basically from this description, where are you at on the great filter? Most businesses never make it past tier 1. They live and die by the owners. You want to get to the point where you are at tier 3, where you can build leverage by hiring out more people, creating consistent outcomes where the business is predictably growing. Ideally, you leave for 6 months and you come back and the business is even better than it was when you left, when you originally left. So again, which tier are you? Well, very likely, I don't know who you are, viewer, but I'm going to guess that you're probably hovering around tier 1, maybe tier 2. So let's fix these by going through our 5 basically scenarios that we need to, or obstacles that we need to fix before we could ultimately grow our business, because each one of these is going to continuously give you more and more leverage. Now, first and foremost, you need a target. So what we want to do, again, is a lot of businesses will say, hey, I work with everybody, or I'm in this niche. You've probably heard that term over and over again, but I can guarantee you that you are not specific enough. So you probably are not specific. And what does that mean? Well, I can tell you now, a lot of businesses will think of themselves as like, oh, I'm a car detailer. And then you kind of get a little bit more of an idea of like, yeah, I'm a car detailer in Los Angeles, and I really like to work on, Oldsmobiles or sports cars or something like that. That's when you start to explore, wait a minute, now all of these people who I'm working with have very consistent needs and they use a lot of the same language. So I'm starting to understand that my niche isn't car detailing. My niche is I work with people who have hot rods in the Los Angeles areas, and I provide specifically car detailing for those who put their vehicles in auto shows. That way, now you understand who your target is, not your niche. What you want to figure out is who am I going after? And you want to break down all the core elements. If you have not figured out your target, then none of this will be able to pan out, because the reason that your ads fail, that marketing doesn't seem to work, that SEO, that having a cold caller, that doing email marketing, that doing all these things that seem to guarantee you generate customers and generate leads or clients or whatever your token is that you utilize as your verbiage, is because you are not specific enough. I can't tell you how many times I work with a small business owner and I would see their ads and they would say like, hey, do you have IT issues in your business? Well, we provide IT services for your business. Well, you know what a small business actually is? The SBA, or the Small Business Association, considers anything under 250 employees anything under 250 employees to be a small business. That means if you're running an ad that says I provide IT for small businesses, you're talking about everything from, somebody who runs a nonprofit with 5 people to a local brick and mortar with 10 employees, all the way up to maybe even a brick and mortar chain of dental practices. It is not clear enough. Working with businesses, working in a specific sector, working in your own industry is not a niche. The niche is not accounting, the niche is not tech, the niche is not car detailing, it's not landscaping, it's not videography. It is who you are serving in this world that matters most. Your target needs to be fleshed out. So if you're going to say like, okay, I'm a videographer, well, you might want to say like, okay, I'm a videographer that works specifically with local gym owners who have at least 3 locations in major urban areas who want to automate their workouts. That is a very clear target, because now you understand what it is they want. You probably work with less variables. And the best part is you are ultimately going to be deploying the same blueprint over and over and over again, which makes your life easier. Charge 10 times more, deliver 5 times the amount of value, and do half the work. It's a win-win for everybody. You get really good at something. Those people hang out with other people who are just like them. You get more referrals, you get more recommendations, you get happier clients, you get happier customers, because they all of a sudden look at it and go, oh, this brand or this business or this whatever understands me. And suddenly your cost to market goes down, your results go up, everything starts to fit into place because you are looking at a specific window from their perspective. Now, you're probably not specific enough. And I'll tell you now, this is the first thing you need to actually focus on, because if you can't do this, then you'll never move past tier 1. Hence why a lot of local businesses get stuck in here, because they say, oh yeah, I want to work with everybody. But it's contradictory, because when you work with everybody, then all of a sudden you're working with too many different variables. Think about it this way. If you want to stay in tier 1 and just be a small business owner forever, what would be easier? Having a predictable way to get new customers or clients, doing less work to deliver better results for them, and ultimately compounding that growth over time? Or would you rather work with everybody, which means 50 different customer types and all these different wants, needs, likes, and desires, and all these different languages and all these different price points, and all that extra work falls on you? So I can tell you now which one I would prefer. To recap, pick a target, pick somebody, flesh them out, their age, their gender, their job titles, their hobbies, their wants, needs, likes, desires, their pain, their dreams. What is it that you are focusing on? Because I will tell you now, the first thing that any business should be doing is just focusing on one target, especially if you're under $1 million. This is completely non-negotiable if you were under 1 million. If you get past that point, sure, open up more verticals, but if you're under $1 million in yearly revenue, then this is why you're never going to reach $1 million, is because you don't have a clearly defined target. Now, second, once you figured out your target, you start to understand that there are a lot of similarities between people who work in those different or inside of that particular market segment. So right now, your offer is not going to be a price point, and it's not going to be a title. The easiest way to think about this is whatever you call your thing when you compare it to other stuff. So if you're like, hey, I'm a landscaper, I'm 50 an hour. Well, guess what? They don't want to calculate those hours. They don't understand why you're a better landscaper. They don't look at it and say like, yeah, it just kind of sounds like you work with every single person under the sun. So when you look at it, the value is really low because realistically you don't have an offer. And an offer is realistically when you start to quantify what makes you different. Think about it this way. If I went into a McDonald's and I said I wanted some food and they said, what can we make you? That means that that business is now going to have tons of different ingredients, tons of different skill sets, tons of different expertise, because I might say I want a roast beef sandwich, I want a French dip, I want a fried chicken sandwich, and they have to adapt on the fly. And funny enough, this is why most businesses that are restaurants run by like a ma and pa format tend to ultimately shutter when the owners start to retire or the business ultimately fails. And that is also why really successful restaurateurs say like, all right, I have a target, I'm gonna start selling to them, and I have an offer because my menu is very small, I have a select few ingredients, and I can create that same experience over and over again. You need to think more like McDonald's. What is your Big Mac and how are you deploying that? Because what you'll find is your offer gets easier and faster as you interact with more people in the market because you're compounding all of that, you're sandwiching all of that data into something that makes more and more sense. Your offer is basically a script to why. I guess the easiest way to think about this is a script as to why you're better. Or if you want to think about it as another way, why you. So what you're going to find is as your business starts to stall, is because your offer isn't clear because first of all, you don't have a target. But if you don't have a clear offer, then unfortunately what happens is you're having to adapt on the fly with every single person or prospect that you interact with. That's not good because while you may be getting better at sales and marketing or conveying how your product or service is valuable to somebody, that is not going to be scalable. And just like McDonald's, they deploy the same Big Mac in Los Angeles as they do in New York, as they do in Miami, as they do in Germany. You need to think the same way. If you had 100 chances to get it right with just one customer, that'd be great. But more often than not, we only get one, if not in very rare cases, maybe a few times. And that is why the offer matters the most, because you are taking everything that they are concerned about from that interaction. It's capitalism, the risk involved in exchange of monetary goods or time or whatever sacrifice they're putting in, and decreasing the risk and increasing the perceived outcome. Meaning that if you do not have a script to say, all right, this is what you get, this is how long it takes, this is what's included, this is why it matters, this is the transformation you're going to go through, and best of all, we guarantee our services. Something along those lines. If we were to go back to the tier 1 example of a personal trainer, a lot of businesses say, I own a gym, I'm a personal trainer, I'm a nutritionist, hence why they're tier 1. So you move into the niche and offer stage and say, well, I'd like to work with busy tech CEOs who struggle to meet their fitness weight loss goals. So I'm going to say, I'm going to help you lose 10 pounds in 30 days. You're going to get a nutrition guide, which is going to help you cut down your grocery bills and eat healthier, but they're also tasty meals. You're going to get a gear list so you can build your home office that works for you whether you're at home as well or on vacation, or even if you're at work as well. Best of all, if you want to bring along some of your other tech buddies, I give you 10% off of your class. You're going to join an exclusive Facebook group of other tech CEOs who are building out their fitness journey and going on this together. I'm going to send you weekly accountability texts. And if you don't lose the 10 pounds in 30 days, I will work for you for free until you do. That is an offer. You have to take everything that you're doing right now and boil it down. A lot of times with small business owners, when I say why you, that's basically a blanket fluff statement that they throw back. We have great customer service. We're local. We're like a family. We're your trusted neighborhood. Oh, we're so good. Well, if you are so good, why is nobody buying your stuff? It's because your offer is not clear. It doesn't explicitly tell me what value you get, and ultimately it isn't aligned with my needs. Meaning that every time somebody jumps into a meeting, a Zoom call, a lunch on, whatever it is, and you're saying like, well, how much money do you have? What's the budget? Well, what would you like to see happen? You're all of a sudden destroying all credibility because now you are not positioned as somebody who understands the market needs, and you're basically adapting on the fly. That means more work, that means a worse result for your customer or client, and that means ultimately you cannot scale it because you can't hire salespeople in the future. And otherwise, if you do, they're going to be super high commission or they're going to want crazy high salaries because they're going to have to sell to 50 different people and 50 different methodologies. But if you have a clear offer, then all you realistically need to do is to get somebody to say the right words to the right person. So to recap, you need an offer to build leverage. If you don't have an offer, well, that's because right now you're probably relying on fluff statements. You can't quite tell me why you're better, but you understand that you're probably better. But unfortunately, you might be all too familiar with the age-old, well, I really liked your stuff when I bought it. That is a problem because most people don't understand and they see it as risky before they actually even consider purchasing it. When you have an offer, your amount of sales go up, the amount of work you need to do to convince somebody to buy your stuff goes down, and ultimately you have a scalable version of your business because now you are deploying the same script. Are you this person with this problem? Would you like this outcome? Here's what you get in this amount of time, and best of all, I guarantee something along those lines. If you want to boil it down, you can say that we help target get outcome using process in time frame. That is a really good way to basically build your first offer. I'm going to write that down as well just so you have a copy of it. So, to recap, if you want to build your basic first offer, we help target get outcome, get outcome in time using process. So, we help first-time home buyers get into their perfect first fixer-upper in just 30 days using our first-time home buyer process assistance. We help those with waterfront property get beautifully manicured lawns that impress all of their neighbors in just one day using our landscaping process. So these are very rudimentary examples, but we help somebody get the outcome in time using process is really going to start the foundation of your offer. If you are struggling to formulate that more, you can always elaborate on what is involved in it and start to stretch those out. List all the things that are involved in working with you from the very beginning to discovering you until the very end of getting their result. And I guarantee you, you'll realize that you're probably doing a lot more. Take all of those things that you're doing, plug them straight into your offer here, and now you can tell me succinctly why you're better than the competition. Now, 3, repeat. This is the part where people really start to miss the mark and they are thinking either in systems, in automation, in predictability, or they're failing to understand why their business isn't growing, but it's because they can't focus. If you are under 1 mil, again, these are non-negotiables because you need repeatable processes. The thing is about successful businesses, they're often very boring because it's just the same thing over and over again. Now, what you're probably doing is you are way too distracted and you are way too dependent. Meaning that the business is dependent on you and you're distracted because you can't make it not dependent on you because you're doing too many things. And the problem is right now, if you don't have a repeatable system to get customers, to get clients, to get sales, then you literally have no leverage to actually grow the business. A lot of times you have to realize that business is ruthless. You're here to make money. You are here to grow. You are here to stay in business forever. Otherwise, you can start a 501(c) and become a nonprofit. But if you're too distracted and too dependent on the business to actually run things, meaning you likely can't give up control to somebody, or you think to yourself, well, only I can do this, or only I'm able to implement this, or only I can change this. Or you're saying like, okay, well, I don't really want to do all of this stuff here, so I'm going to focus on that and this, and I'm going to try SEO today, and then I'm going to try Facebook ads, and oh wait, those didn't work, and now I'm going to try, maybe Google ads will work this time, or maybe I'll go to that other networking event. You just need to focus on getting really good at one thing. Every single one of these techniques works. The problem is that A, you're probably not picking the most efficient one, and more than likely B, you are not sticking with it for long enough. Just get to the point where you have a repeatable outlet to get attention and turn that into money. By that, you just need to focus on one thing. And that one thing will give you more leverage than anything that anybody will ever promise you in the land of business. You just need one repeatable way to turn strangers into profitability. And right now, a lot of small businesses, especially those stuck at tier 1, have no predictable way to get new leads, clients, or customers or sales. They have no way to repeat that process, even if they did it once successfully. And they solely typically rely on word of mouth, networking, referrals. Maybe you send out a few random emails, maybe you go to the local chamber, maybe you do something where you knock on doors, but those are not going to be scalable in the long run. So find where everybody is hanging out that wants to buy your thing. If it's Facebook, get really good at Facebook ads. If it is in-person events, get really good at being a storyteller at those events and stand up on stage so people can see your stuff. If it is Google, then what is preventing you from being at the top of those Google ad results? Start to work backwards. When you understand your target, you'll probably understand, okay, most of them hang out somewhere on the internet, in person, at an event, somewhere these people congregate. Humans are tribal creatures. Go to that outlet and observe how these people interact and understand and start to think about how you can implement your stuff into there. What a lot of times happens is businesses go through this vicious cycle where they try one thing one week and they haven't stuck with it for nearly long enough. There's no baseline. And then all of a sudden they say, oh, that doesn't work for me, even though it works for your competitor. The irony of it. I'll give you an example. I see this all the time with advertising, which is, okay, you don't have a target, you don't have an offer, so then all of a sudden your marketing falls apart. Or even when you do have a target or when you do have an offer, you run one Facebook ad with one video for 5 days and say, well, that didn't really work. The reality is that there is no silver bullet that's going to blow you up on any of these platforms. If you had done 100 videos on Facebook and spent 1,000 in ad spend and said it's still not working, there might be some truth to it. But if you say, hey, I uploaded one video to YouTube and I didn't get 500 leads overnight, then talk to me when you've uploaded at least 100 and there might be some truth to this not working. But until then, just focus on one thing. Find where your people hang out who actually buy your stuff, analyze how they communicate, what they actually talk about, and just focus on broadcasting your message onto there. You will need a repeatable way to get customers, clients, or sales that is not dependent on you as the owner. And regardless of what people have told you, word of mouth, referrals, networking, they are not ever going to scale because there's only one of you. The whole purpose of repeatability is to build relationships at scale, meaning that the owner of every successful business is not knocking on doors and trying to pitch you their thing. They are in so many different outlets and building so many different connections with prospects at the same time that they've gotten a repeatable way to build leverage. And you'll get to that point where you have many different outlets. getting you actual sales, prospects, leads, and clients. But for now, you don't have a baseline because you're too distracted and you're too dependent. So you need to relinquish that control and start to look at it from your customer's perspective. The biggest leverage you can have is turning a little bit of money into a lot of money by having a repeatable pipeline that converts strangers into profit. If you can basically put $1 in into some outlet and get $2 out, that's great. If you can do that predictably, that's even better. If you can put $1 in and consistently figure out how to get more dollars out, you've won the game. Now you have a repeatable system. You have a money printing machine, basically. So until you start to separate your distractions and you're trying to do all these different things, you're posting to 5 different social outlets and you're trying 5 different techniques and 10 different advertising platforms, scrap all of that and just focus on one of them for at least 6 months. I guarantee you, you'll get really good at it. It will start to work, and ultimately that growth will compound. Only then can you start to translate into other ones. For instance, I started off with Facebook ads for so long before I even considered moving on to another platform like LinkedIn or TikTok or YouTube, because I needed to understand inside and out how that platform worked, what success looked like, and where I should be aligning the metrics so that that platform can get me the most results. To give you an example of what this looks like, I was able to, over 6 iterations of shooting maybe 10, 20 different ad videos, I originally had started off around $20 per lead, and I drove that down to about $3 per lead. Not only that, I also improved the in-between booking process, meaning that every single time I was getting a lead and for what I was charging, I was spending less on marketing to get better results. And at the end of it, I was able to get qualified leads who were buying my stuff for less than the price of a cup of coffee. And best of all, if just one of them was actually purchasing my thing, that's a 15 to 20x return. All because I said, forget all these other platforms. I just want to get good where my clientele hang out. Now to recap, business that's actually successful, often boring. You just need a repeatable way to get people interested in your stuff, turn strangers into profit. Cut out everything that's not working, map it out if you need to. Here's a whiteboard. You can go buy one from an office store and write down all the different places that you get sales, that you get customers, that you get clients, whatever you want to call your prospects, and say, all right, which one of these is returning the highest amount and which one of these is just wasting our time. Cut out all the fat until you get the best of and just double down on that winner. So the next thing is scaling. And this is really where now all of a sudden you realize, all right, I have a repeatable system. I'm really focused and I'm honed in on what's happening. Now I'm starting to realize that, wait a minute, I was really cool when I was like, hey, I want 500 customers, but I'm going to run out of inventory, or I want 500 leads, but I can't really fulfill those leads. Scaling is when you start to say, how can I make this thing work without me? So right now, you probably are afraid to give up control. And you need to think about everything that gives you leverage. And by that, I mean, you're basically now thinking, as your old employer was, how can I hire people, or how can I automate things in this day and age to give me as much return as possible? What I recommend doing is mapping out everything that is involved in your business, not just the purchasing, from start to finish. When you wake up and you actually do your job in your business, what is involved in there? And you can start to think of these as, okay, some of these are time wasters. Some of these I could literally pay somebody less money to get, so I could be focusing on making more money. And the problem is a lot of businesses will say like, well, it's great that I'm doing all these things and I have all my hands in all these different buckets and I'm really building a really cool business and I'm getting all these really cool skills. But here's the thing. Ask yourself this. Is what you're doing right now actually getting and moving the needle in your business? Is it making the business grow? Is it earning as much as possible? Extracting as much value out of that time? Because really successful people realize that time is the same between everybody. It's just how you're utilizing your time, or more importantly, other people's time. We all have the same 24 hours, but if you can get other people to do more work within that time on your behalf, then all of a sudden you can take that time and say, all right, well, this is making me a lot of money every time I do this, and this is costing me 4 hours a day and wasting my time and effort. So for instance, if you're out there and you're like, hey, I'm doing a lot of these little stupid, crossing T's and dotting I things, and I could pay a virtual assistant, or I could pay somebody out there a little bit of money to do this, then realistically do that, because you could be focusing on getting more sales, getting more prospects, getting more clients, making calls, fixing your ads, improving your offer. You could be doing something that probably gives you a lot more leverage and ultimately would allow the business to scale, because naturally you're outsourcing it and other people are doing it, and you're probably getting really good at the training and onboarding of what it would take for another human. Or the other aspect of this too is, what can you automate? Because a lot of times I see people who are sitting there doing, oh man, I'm drafting proposals, I'm sending emails, I'm doing reminders. And realistically, if you could just get a bot to do that, if you can get a script to do that, just do it. Because at the end of the day, first priority is automation, second priority is outsourcing. And that will give you so much. When you scale it, you want it to work without you. If you have something that can work without you, if it can work on autopilot, again, just like repeatable client or customer sales, then you work in the same way with all of your operations. It might be something as simple as, when they sign your digital proposal, can you just redirect them to a page that books a meeting? When they buy your thing, can you send them a reminder text to give you a 5-star review on Google instead of asking? When they ultimately need to be reminded something happens, can you just set it on a timer? Or can you hire somebody for $100 a week who will do the menial stuff, so that you can focus on getting more customers and clients who are going to 10x that? If you can get a better return on your time or your ROT, then go for it. Look at all the things that are probably time wasters right now and figure out what you can be replaced with, either a program or a person. Now, to recap, you have to give up control to scale. At some point, you're going to want this business to operate without you, especially if your ambition is to sell it or give it to somebody in your family, or, add more partners or do something in this that doesn't involve you. A lot of the times, you'd be surprised how many successful businesses, especially CEOs or anybody who's up in these huge Fortune 500 companies, only owns a small portion of the pie. They need other people to push the buttons, move the levers, turn those gears, all that fun stuff. And you need to think just like them as well, because right now, if you're just, oh, I'm doing this all by myself, I'm doing this, all this work, and you're working and you're working and you're working, and you're not really making enough money and you're not really growing, it's probably because you have no systems in place. Think like a systems engineer, think like a machine, think like a programmer. Which one of these buttons can be automated? Which one of these buttons can be pressed by another person? That will give you more leverage for this to work without you. So number 5 is risk. And this is something I see a lot with brand new business owners. They are too afraid to take calculated, strategic risks and ultimately create polarization. What I mean by that is, a lot of businesses, a lot of people, a lot of artists, a lot of just anything in this reality has some form of divisiveness. There's no such thing as something or somebody that is liked by everybody in the world. And the more successful you'll get, the more you realize that you open yourself up to that scrutiny, you start to create an us versus them mentality, and ultimately you will have beliefs and things that you stand for that are not aligned with everybody. The problem is right now it's safe. And here's the thing. I get it. It's very easy to play it safe because there's no controversy. There's nothing that's in harm's way. There's nothing stopping your business from ultimately hurting somebody's feelings. But here's the thing. If you do not have a way to create strategic risk in your business, then the reality is you'll always stay a small business. Successful business owners realize that ultimately, at the end of the day, they have to create some form of us versus them mentality. And that means that you're going to have to do things that are either risky in an effort to grow your business, or you're going to have to stand for something so that you can get the right people to understand and buy into your business. This is just natural human psychology. I'll give you an example. If I wanted to grow my business really fast and I started to say, you know what, I'm going to start a YouTube channel just as you're reading here, well, I might say, okay, on a spectrum of different opinions, I can't be all the way where it's safe, where I say, hey, eating vegetables is healthy. Nobody's going to click on that video because they don't care. It's just like, duh, everybody knows that. But all the way on the crazy side, you can't say like, well, if you eat wood chips, it's going to cure your cancer, so go to the playground and eat a bunch of random wood chips. People are like, what do you mean? That's crazy. That's insane. You have to be somewhere in the middle, because a lot of businesses will say, all right, we're really good, but we can't tell you why we're good. And that implies that if you are really good, that means somebody's worse than you. And you need to start to understand that that is really a strength. You have to really throw rocks at something. Safe businesses don't get anywhere. And once you shift your mindset into that, you'll realize the same thing applies to your growth patterns. Because if you just say, all right, I'm gonna never run that new ad, I'm never gonna try this new angle, I'm never gonna put a little bit of money into seeing if this thing works, then the reality is you'll just stay stagnant because you're too afraid to take calculated risks, because you feel like probably most of the time, especially with the business, that it's easier to stay safe than it is to go outside of your comfort zone. And what happens is they just stagnate forever. So you need to be something. You need to just be something to someone. By that I mean, not only do you have a target, not only are you starting to think about what you are doing, but what do you stand for? Eventually, your business is going to have to be something to someone. Otherwise, you don't really have a pocket. You don't have a way to tap into that. You can't ever build a brand. You can't build your tribe. And then if you can't build your tribe, you can't take more risks to get more people into that tribe or even open the door to additional segments. Because when you don't have risk, you say, oh, I want to help everybody. I want to work with everybody. I want to shake hands and be friends with everybody. And you have this big mentality where you're like, yeah, I'm going to change the world. Or maybe if you're just like, yeah, I just want to help my local community. Or maybe you just want to help yourself. Ask yourself, would it be easier to do that if you were a struggling business owner, or if you had more money, more time, and more resources? And the only way to get to more money, more time, and more resources is to learn how to understand risk, how to implement the strategy into your business that creates this divisiveness and creates polarization, and us versus them, throwing rocks. Or maybe you're just saying like, we have to try something new, because at the end of the day, what ends up happening is regardless of if you stay safe, safety will never work in the long run. That is the big thing I want you to understand. Meaning, yes, what might work now if you stay safe will not either allow you to sustain that, because eventually, yes, you will have to raise your prices, you will have to get new customers, the cost of just doing business is going to rise, and if you do not take calculated risks to open more doors, to create more opportunity, to create more ability to just build leverage, then unfortunately the business starts to get slower, it starts to be more painful for you to operate, and it requires more operational overhead. If you look at any of the businesses that fail, I mean, it's the same story whether you're at the small section or whether you're at this huge section. Look at how Sears died. They played it safe when they could have been Amazon. There are a multitude of cases. If you want to go to Google and type in bankruptcy, look at it, and you'll probably be not really shocked to think like, oh yeah, of course that business has become bankrupt. They haven't done anything to adapt to an ever-changing market. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. Well, of course they didn't do this because that hurt them in this way. And if you took that same mentality where it's so easy to look at a big business and think, well, of course they failed, but you can't apply it to your business, then the disconnect is going to hurt you. So to recap, you need to understand how to break out of this safety zone and start to implement risk into your business. You need to stand for something, you need to be something to somebody, and you need to take opportunities to adapt to the market. Your goal is to stay in business forever and grow it as big as you can. That's it. If your goal is not to make money, if your goal is not to succeed as a business, then unfortunately what will happen is just one of two things. It'll fail, or it'll never be sold. Or a reality is at the end of the day, what ends up happening is slowly it will just die a painful death. That's really, it's not going to be overnight when I say a failure. It's not going to be 1 month from now. It might be 6 months from now. But the reality is if you're playing it super safe, then you'll always be in the safety zone and you'll never actually be growing. Growth means pain. Pain means your ability to adapt. Your ability to adapt means your ability to build a more successful business because you're taking calculated risks and you're actually putting your money where your mouth is and actually looking for new opportunities. Now, that doesn't mean you should start opening the doors to all these different targets, changing all these other things overnight and just 180 doing it, but you should start to understand that if you're not doing anything right now to proactively grow the business, then it is just on a very slow downward spiral. But even just the smallest changes right now, even the things that you might think will break something, and you're saying to yourself, okay, it's working, it's great, it's doing right now, then that will not last forever, and you need to even just think about one or two small iterative changes that you can implement. So, overall, figure out where you're at on the tier list. Start to build each one of these into your business, and I guarantee you it will allow you to grow successfully. Now, if you have been struggling to grow your business as well, you can click on the link in the description. We are giving away access to a tool that allows you to get better customers, better leads, all of that sort of stuff automatically. All you have to do is fill it out. It takes about 30 seconds and you'll get access. Otherwise, I do put out a video like this every single week, so be sure to subscribe. Comment below if there's anything you're struggling with your business so I know what content to make, and make sure to like and share this to other people who are going through this. But that's all I have for you today. Until then, I'll see you next time.